This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to This Week in Alabama Politics. Folks, we're glad y'all joined us tonight, but I'm really glad to have one of my friends in Alabama politics, the popular Agriculture Commissioner of Alabama, Mr. Rick Pate. Rick Pate's born and raised right here around the river region, and still a young man, and has a great family life, doing a good job as Agriculture Commissioner. Some of you folks may not be aware of this, but next to the governor, I categorize the Agriculture Commission as being the second most important constitutional office because, folks, agriculture is still our #1 industry, and it's the biggest thing in Alabama still. We got a lot of car manufacturing plants now, and Redstone Arsenal's booming, but agriculture is still #1. Rick, good to have you on the show.
Good to be here, Steve.
You don't mind me calling you Rick, do you?
No, I'd rather you did. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, we about the same. I'm a little older than you. We about the same age. I have my friend Steve Klaus. You know Steve, who's from Ozark.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. He and I grew up our best friends. Our mom was our best friends. Grew up in Troy, and I always say we about the same age. And Steve said, "I know you're 5 years older than me." Every time I say it, so you and Steve about the same age. Anyway, we're glad to have you on the show. You were born and raised right here in the area around Montgomery and Lowndes County, wasn't you?
Yeah,
you from the Montgomery area?
Yeah, I like to say I was born at Camp Rucker down in Dale County, but absolutely.
Claim 2 home counties that way.
Yeah, I claim 2. But my dad was a helicopter pilot while he was in school. I was born, but yeah, my parents moved back here, and Dad been in the cattle business and maintained, was a colonel in the National Guard and had a rural mail route and lived in what was at the time called Burkeville, but right outside of Lounsboro, and they've closed that post office, so now we claim Lounsboro. And actually, I live in Lounsboro proper, the town of Lounsboro, but the farm's about 3 miles away. And I've still got cattle and out there that I.
So you were born. Your daddy was a cattle farmer.
Yeah.
Right here in Lowndes in Montgomery County.
Well, Dad was real involved. Dad was really innovative as far as genetics, and so now almost everybody's talking about genetics, but back 30 years ago when they were first formulating EPDs, or expected progeny differences, a way to calculate how much more improvement this bull would give you over that bull. Dad was one of the leaders in Beef Cattle Improvement Agency, but he was president of the Cattlemen's Association maybe in 76, 77, right through there. And of course, he's in the Livestock Hall of Fame and the Ag Hall of Fame.
What was his name?
Harold Pate.
Harold Pate. I think I've seen his picture before.
Yeah.
I never did know that was your daddy.
Yeah, and so he really was, and he's one of those people, my mother too, that believed in association, just like I said about him participating in BCIA and the cattlemen's, and they really encouraged his mama actually in 1966 ran as a Republican, and you can imagine how hard that was in Lowndes and Ottawa County, and that was I think she finished 3rd, but yeah, that love of politics and feeling like you've got an obligation to serve. And so, yeah, I've been president of the Associated General Contractors, president of the Montgomery Harbor Club, president of the Irrigation Association, and so then was on the town council and mayor of the town of Lounsboro. So, but that's just not me. My brother was president of the Alpha in Lowndes County and president of the veterinarian. He's a veterinarian. And so
he's still practicing over there?
Yeah, he's still practicing.
How many children Harold Pate have? You and him?
5. I've got an older brother and 3 younger sisters. And so.
But you grew up, you watched him raise cattle, so you still do it. Do you still do it on the land y'all had?
Same land, yeah. Well, you're in the Charolais. It's purebred Charolais operation. And I've got, of course, he died maybe 8 years ago, and so I had about 10, and I sort of sold his cattle down, but kept wanting to keep the same genetics and bloodline going. So I have about 50 head now that are sort of part of his bloodline. And
now, Rick, thinking about that, I didn't realize how your dad was Harold Pate, who was so involved in cattlemen's. that tells me that he and Bubba Trotman were best friends, probably one.
Yeah, really, Mr. Bubba has been a lifelong friend. Yeah, I hated his past, and he was
Mr.
really.
Bubba was one of my favorite men in the world. No, he was from Troy.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so my mama and Bubba graduated high school together. And one time I came home from Montgomery and I was having supper with Mama, and I said, Mama, I have always revered Bubba Trotman. He's one of the finest gentlemen I've ever known in my life. And she looked at me and she says, Steve, he was always that way growing up. He was the perfect gentleman the whole time growing up. We graduated high school together. She said, he has always been just a great man. I had Bubba on this show. When I filmed it the first couple of years in Troy and moved it up here about 12 years ago. And Bubba, we came on the show and we talked about Troy stuff a lot, but he also talked about the cattlemen because he and your daddy were very involved in the cattlemen.
Well, because Mr. Bubba, I guess, is the only president of the National Cattlemen Association, and so that year he was president. I think he was installed in San Diego, and my parents didn't travel like we travel all over the country and the world, but it was a big deal to them. They loaded a bus with a
your daddy would go with Bubba
and went to San Diego for Mr. Bubba's installation. In fact, when I started thinking about getting in this race, it might have been the first person I went and talked to, but I went to see Mr. Bubba and asked him if he thought he could support me and thought I ought to run for it.
Yeah. That's amazing how history repeats itself. I was involved in Bubba's 1982 race when he ran for Agriculture Commissioner himself. And the story of that race was all of us from our part of the state assumed Bubba would win that race because he was the perfect person to be Agriculture Commissioner. And we all down here around Montgomery and Troy and South Alabama knew Bubba Trotman. And he indeed carried this part of the state overwhelmingly. He ran in '82, but he got beat by Albert McDonald from Huntsville, and that told the book on the votes in North Alabama. That McDonald beat him, and it was almost like a direct line that Bubba lost because they beat him 2-1 in North Alabama because they voted for the local guy. Friends and neighbors politics.
You used to, because you know so much more about politics than me, but they used to always talk about that I-65 corridor, but it's really sort of that U.S. Highway 278 corridor now that goes from Georgia to Mississippi. That comes all the way from Mississippi to Georgia. I mean, every county you go through there growing and got lots of voters, and you go down. I remember in my runoff down in Choctaw County.
Who ran against you? I'm trying to think of that race.
Gerald Dial.
Gerald Dial ran, but was y'all in the runoff together?
Yeah. We had four. There was four actually in the primary, and
you and Dial went runoff.
Yeah.
Well, he came from such a small county, he didn't have anything to draw on. Like
it's a lot bigger than Lowndes.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of that, you were mayor of Lounsboro, wasn't it?
Well, and it's a small town, but we had a water system, and so that's really 80% of your responsibility is keeping the water on. But while I was those 12 years, we drilled a new well, we installed a new water tank, and we expanded. We've got a lot of people have settled along the Alabama River there on lots, and so we actually were able to expand the water system up to some of those subdivisions. So we grew the water system, put in a park. Well, they actually put the park in. We did some stuff for the trails, and so it's a nice town. Yeah. A
lot of folks don't realize this. The era your daddy and Bubba Trotman were in the cattle business. Montgomery, Lowndes, and this whole area, Montgomery especially, was just known as a cattle place. It was one of the biggest growing cattle places. If you name the areas of the state, they would start with Montgomery when it came to cattle. It was that was the thing.
Yeah, and as far as cattle numbers, this part of the state's still really high. You'd have to say, because poultry's so big now, DeKalb and Coleman kind of go back and forth as far as who's got the biggest numbers there now. But yeah, as far as cattle number, we certainly have more down here.
Commissioner, the people, when KI was trying to pass that Rebuild Alabama, the road program thing and everything, part of that money went to the state docks. And I would talk to several of the state senators from up there, and Greg Reed from Jasper was interested. He said, we got to expand those state docks. And we got part of the Rebuild Alabama went to it. But the biggest benefactor of that thing is agriculture. I'm told because all those state centers along that poultry belt there, Schofield from Arab, Fan Mountain, and Steve from DeKalb, and all those guys, they were going to vote for it. I said, why y'all so much for it? Because of the state docks. We use those state docks for
Well, probably mentioned Steve Livingston.
Steve Livingston,
yeah. But a lot of the poultry and stuff now, of course, currently going to Savannah. And so even though you think it's sort of Alabama state dock, so everything from Alabama, that's not really what was happening. A lot of stuff from Mississippi and Arkansas was going out our docks, and a lot of stuff from South Alabama. But it seemed like the cars and a lot of things, poultry, were going to Savannah, and so we're hoping to reverse that. And not only have they widened the dredge the thing, but we've had a huge cold storage facility built down there, and that's going to impact just as much because now they got the ability to flash freeze that poultry, and so they can bring it in there, flash freeze it, put it on those ships, and so we've expanded a lot of other capacity other than just dredging the channel. So
you know, Senator Shelby and I have been good friends for 35, 38 years, and I'm so sad about it. Not running, but you can't blame him. He's 87 years old, going to be 88. People can't comprehend what he's done for this state. They can't unless people like you and me who know how government works. But I was sitting with him. We have dinner periodically. We have sitting at Highlands in Birmingham one night about a year or two or 3 years ago, and he says, he looked over at me and he said, I'm fixing to do something about that docks in Mobile. He said, you know, this has to do with car manufacturing. He said that we cannot ship our cars being made in Alabama through that docks. It's not wide enough and not deep enough. He says it's a shame that we're building cars, Mercedes in Tuscaloosa, and we have to ship them to Savannah. And he doggone sure did it because actually, Rick, half that money has come from Washington because of Shelby. Half of it's on rebuild Alabama, but Shelby really is the one who did that dredging down there with federal dollars.
Oh, I mean, but people hear announcement of Hyundai or Mazda, Toyota, and they think, well, that's good, they selected. There's a lot of work and infrastructure and thinking years ahead, just like thinking ahead on the dredging of that.
He told me 3 years ago it's going to be on my radar screen.
Well, and we'll reap the benefits for that for the next 20, 30 years, right? And so people will be, well, that's great, somebody selected us, but it's because of the infrastructure.
You know, the reason Redstone Arsenal is growing like it is because of Shelby.
Absolutely.
We're going to miss him.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to miss him with Maxwell Gunner here in Montgomery. I mean, the F-35 wouldn't have come here except for Shelby. Yeah, I mean, the other people trying to claim credit for it, but the bottom line is you're chairman of the Senate Defense Appropriation Committee, those generals don't want to make you mad. I mean, what he's brought to this state is unheard of. I didn't mean to get off on that. Let's talk more about agriculture. Poultry is number one.
If you consider take out timber, yeah.
Timber is dollar-wise, how do you rate that? I mean, I kind of talk about the
I don't have those numbers on top of my head, but yeah, timber is by far the biggest, and we've had lots, and it's kind of one of those things that, you know, I guess I grew up as a young boy, people talked about cutting down trees and like that was a bad thing, but over the last 30, 40 years, we've been planting in Alabama 1.1 tree for every one we cut down, and so we've reached a point that we got so many flipping trees in this state. Yeah, I saw a statistic the other day. If we didn't plant another tree for the next 50 years, we couldn't cut the loblolly pine down.
Is that right?
Of course, down in Troy, we had wrecks just located, but we've had multiple people, big firms make major investments in Alabama.
Were you involved with that Rex thing? They
no, you know, in Alabama we separate forestry from ag and industry.
Oh,
so
that's why the forestry got their own
Rick
thing.
Oates and the Forestry Commission. Yeah. So, but yeah, poultry's a large second though. It's way above anything.
Far as growing.
The dollar amounts that it generates to Alabama's economy.
And it's not just in the north part of the state now. I think areas like somebody told me Dothan's big, the poultry's bigger in Dothan or the wiregrass than peanuts now. Is that true? That's not necessarily true.
I mean, poultry's there, and there's a couple of between Houston County and Coffee County and down there's 2 or 3 processing facilities, and so you get a processing, and there's a certain number of poultry houses that got to support the supply of chicken. So it's big now. To say it's bigger than it could be. In fact, I listened to a program from Extension this morning talking about the peanut industry in in that wiregrass area, but I don't know which one would be dollar. But
who'd be at the poultry, and what would be sucking, you think? Does cattle go in their own category? Is it?
Yeah, it's a big drop off. Once you leave timber and poultry, it's a big drop off, and you start getting into a lot of things that are close. I can't remember.
Peanuts?
No,
Peanuts
I don't think it's
corn.
Well, you got all those corn, cotton, soybean, peanuts, all in there together. I don't know there's that much of a difference between the. But it seems like, if I remember right, it might even be greenhouse sod and nursery.
I know what it was. When I had John McMillan on this show, when he was agriculture commissioner, he made a point that landscaping, just pure landscaping, I guess growing grass for yards, is now one of the biggest industries.
Well, right. Well, it's grouped together: greenhouse, sod, nursery. Those three.
Nursery, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he told me that Mobile, that might be the biggest industry.
Well, it definitely, Mobile's been a leader for 50 years.
In landscaping.
In growing and nurseries, growing plants. Yeah, that whole Sims area west of Mobile has been sort of like a mecca to,
So that would be right, that if you said landscaping, greenhouse would be the biggest
I
biggest
think so.
agriculture.
I'm just talking about memory.
Yeah, just memory, yeah. What about as you move up north to the Black Belt? What are they doing mostly over there? Catfish farming is big over there.
Catfish, and fortunately, most all our commodities are doing well right now. And hopefully, I'd say this, and I know some farmer maybe didn't, but last year, 2020 should have been good with the government programs that people were able to get. And of course, the governor gave us $20 million, and we were able to give that out to our poultry growers, our cattlemen, almost all row crop farmers, our vegetable people. We actually gave a little bit to the stockyards. They got hurt there in April. But catfish, we gave some money to the 2 poultry processing plants that are in Alabama. But yeah, catfish prices last I think I looked was $1.24 a pound for premiums, and I can remember when I first went in, it was less than $1. So that 25-cent difference is the difference between making money and not making money. And so, so that's sort of West Alabama. You probably got a lot of timber. That whole southwest part of the state has got a huge amounts of timber, and then catfish in those 4 counties over there.
Well, let me talk more specifically about the area of our viewing audience here. Let's take the river region and the counties surrounding here: Talga, Elmore, Chilton, even going to Chilton, and maybe going over around getting to the Lowndes County. What's the biggest agriculture input in that 4 or 5 county area? Talga, Elmore, Montgomery, Russell, Macon, Lowndes.
Well, I'd say Lowndes would be cattle probably. There's just not a lot of row crop left. There's a few. In fact, I was seeing something yesterday. I don't know that any peanuts are planted, but there's some peanuts. The south part of Talga County is good farming land, and there's several big farmers over there. And then, of course, you get into Dallas, and but yeah, obviously, peanuts, cotton, going down into the wiregrass would be 2 of the. They kind of rotate those back and forth just for the nematodes and stuff, going back and forth between them.
What kind is agriculture? Is the cattle still biggest in Montgomery County? If there's any agriculture input in Montgomery?
I don't know how much row cropping does. You got a big farmer over in Macon County that probably does some over in the east side of the county. I don't know really who in the south end of the county is doing a whole lot of row crop farming. There's
what
a lot
about
of
down
cows.
toward the wiregrass? When you go through Pike, Dale, Coffee, and Houston, what's that?
Oh, now that's good land. Yeah,
What's the biggest thing down there? Peanuts still biggest?
Oh yeah, peanuts are huge. Yeah,
it's still big. The biggest, bigger than cotton, or
well, it's normally a rotational thing. So a guy got 1,000 acres, he might plant 500 acres of peanuts on this part and 500 cotton, and then next year he just flips them. And so I think most anybody that's growing peanuts is also growing cotton. In general, that's always the case.
Do they have to come to you and ask you if they can grow that stuff?
No.
You don't. The federal government, they do what they want to, can't they?
Yeah, they did away with a lot of them programs where they were trying to limit people planting, and you lost your basis if you planted more than you were supposed to. Yeah, And so prices are good right now. I think I saw cotton was 84 cents. Corn prices are good. So there's really a lot of good options for people right now. And so that's kind of part of the business of farming is what we're going to plant, what's going to do well next year.
Do you still monitor the gasoline that they get pumped and everything?
Yeah, because people know, probably nobody but us understand all our roads. But yeah, because we've got responsibility for animal health, you know, which would be devastating. We were talking about poultry. If we got some avian influenza, well, the state veterinarian worked for us, and then we're responsible for all food safety in the state.
See,
and
that's
so,
a big thing.
Yeah, and so we're the
How many
one.
inspectors do you have statewide then? Ballpark.
We have about 350 employees and about 100 in the building, so the other 250 are out. But yeah, we've got responsibilities for pesticide regulations. We've got for you know, which is a huge deal, registration of all those kind of products. But then you mentioned about the gas pumps. Really, everything that's in commerce that's weighed or measured. So most people have seen that sticker on the gas pump, but if you looked at the scale at Winn-Dixie where they weigh your bananas, we certify that thing's giving you right. If you buy a ton of sand and gravel, we have to certify that scale at the sand and gravel. Like I said, anything that's weighed or measured that goes into commerce, we don't care about the price of it. That's between you and the person selling, but we make sure if you say you're getting a gallon, you get a gallon. Or if you get a pound, you get a pound.
That's good. That's one of the biggest things y'all do, isn't it?
We do a lot of important stuff.
How many employees you got totally under the Agriculture Commission?
Well, 350 or so.
Most of them in that building out there on the Richard Bill building?
100. So the rest of them are sprinkled all over the state. And so we have responsibility for reporting all the sales in the stockyard. So every time a stockyard opens up, we got an employee in there, and he's recording what cattle are selling for, and he's reporting that back to us, and then we compile all that information, report it to USDA, and then we send it out to all the cattlemen, and so they know if the stockyard over here is getting a little better price than that one, or you know, where to take the cattle to. But
Rick, talking about that, the cattlemen and everything, that when I was growing up here around this area, that rodeo out there at Garrett Coliseum was the biggest thing going in this part of the state. One of the biggest things of the year. You go to it, I know being a cattle person growing up, but that building got in bad shape, and the city, tell me, the city of Montgomery took that thing over. They're going to fix it up.
Well, I'm actually a member of the Southeastern Livestock Exposition that puts that rodeo on, but yeah, it did when it was on spring break and people's lives centered around showing calves, and it's like the whole state seemed to use its spring break to come to Montgomery and watch those calf shows and stuff, and now people are heading to the lake or heading to the beach, and we've tried moving it off of spring break and different things, but yeah, I was this morning heard, because we're going to have the rodeo this year. It's I think it's that third weekend in March. I think it's around March 20th, 19th, right through there. But of course, it's back to being a PRCA rodeo. But I think it's going to actually be televised this year. The rodeo that was supposed to be the week before ours this year has gotten canceled, and so I think they're going to bring in TV crews, and they're going to step up the prize money. And so, yeah, it's really a good rodeo. I'd say we went through a little bit of decline with the quality of the cowboys, the quality of the stock, but the last 2 to 3 years, it's just been, we hired a new stock contractor, and that brings in more cowboys and up the prize money. And so it's really, if you care anything about rodeo, or even just enjoy that whole ambiance of that, it's a great time to come. The tickets are reasonably priced, and cities agreed we can have it. I think we have to limit attendance to about 3,500, but that shouldn't be a problem. We can spread everybody out every other row. It's a pretty big building.
But not just the COVID year, but they must realize it's a big economic boon to have that building out there to renovate it, buy it and renovate it. For the city of Montgomery.
If you think about the city of Montgomery, they don't really have a big venue anymore. I mean,
for everything, for
anything,
any event. That's why it's not just a rodeo.
The Impact's the biggest facility they got, so they just needed something. They've got ideas about, you know, they've had some basketball games out there, and they're planning on doing more of those kind of high school athletic events. But yeah, they've talked about having an ice hockey team, and
shoot, they can have the state basketball playoffs out there.
Yeah, I've seen Auburn play out there before. Back 20, 30 years ago. Yeah.
I think Alabama and Auburn played out there. I think they played it. I don't know that for sure. Back a long time ago, there used to be SEC teams playing at Crampton Bowl. Yeah. You probably remember that. Rick, do you remember, did you go to high school up here or you go in Lowndes County?
I went to Lowndes County.
Do you remember, you're young, old enough to remember what a rivalry that Leland-Ear rivalry was.
Oh, heck yeah.
They'd start the Leland-Ear game before the season started. It was bigger than the Alabama-Auburn game.
Well, and Tom Jones, Coach Lee, was from Lowndes County, and he still lived out there. Most of the time he was coaching at Lee. And so,
he lived in Lowndes County.
Yeah, he sort of in that
spent 20 or 30
area.
years out there, didn't he? Yeah. That was one heck of a rivalry.
Yeah.
They'd win the state championship and everything. Leland-Ear win football, basketball, and track.
Yeah.
Be one of the two of them.
I was actually at Lowndes when Lowndes was one of the years Lee was state champion. Lowndes was 1A school and came up and played Lee.
Y'all played Lee?
Yeah, it was close because we won.
Y'all played them close?
It was like 7-0 or maybe just 13-0 at halftime. They ended up wearing us down because we just had to say.
What did you play in high school?
I was in the 8th grade then.
What position did you play in high school football?
What year?
What position did you play?
Oh, I played linebacker and guard. Yeah.
I tell you who likes you a lot is Glenn Halbrooks. Yeah, he's at the Rotary Club from Channel 8.
Yeah,
CBS. I'm on CBS 8 here in Montgomery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like him. He's talked about you being at the Rotary Club all the time.
Well, I was president, and I think he was president of that club the next year. It's really a good club because the governor's a member.
Yeah.
3 or
Young
4
Boozer
Will
was
Sellers.
in it. Supreme Court. Tom Parker's in there, I think.
Tom Parker, Will Sellers, Chad Hanson.
Yeah, Hanson, Supreme Court. That's a good Rotary Club. You've been president before, haven't you?
Right.
Well, folks, I hate to tell y'all our time is up. Our guest tonight has been Alabama Agriculture Commissioner Rick Pate. We thank him for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us on Alabama Politics. And we hope you folks will tune in next week for Alabama Politics. Thanks again, Commissioner.
Thanks, Steve. Enjoyed it.